You've probably heard that renting is throwing your money away, and buying is how you actually build wealth. It's one of the most repeated pieces of financial advice out there, and it's also one of the most incomplete. Today we're running the actual math behind renting versus buying in your late 20s, because the honest answer depends on numbers most people never actually run. Let's make this real with an example. Take Q. He's 29, he's been renting the same one-bedroom apartment for a few years, and he's trying to decide whether it's time to buy instead. We'll come back to Q throughout this video because his situation is where all of this math actually matters. Here's the flaw in the renting throws money away idea. Buying isn't free money into equity either. A big chunk of every mortgage payment in the early years goes towards interest, not principal, meaning a large piece of what you pay doesn't build equity at all, especially in the first several years of a loan. On top of that, owning comes with costs that renting simply doesn't have: property tax, homeowner's insurance, and maintenance. None of that builds equity, it just keeps the place standing. So let's put Q's numbers on this. Say Q finds a condo for $300,000. If he buys it, closing costs alone would run him somewhere around $6,000 to $15,000 paid up front before he's built a single dollar of equity. And in year one, most of his monthly payment is going towards interest, not principal. If Q only cared about the sticker price of the mortgage payment versus his rent, he'd be missing most of the actual cost. When people compare renting and buying, they usually compare rent to just the mortgage payment. But that's not the full cost of owning. You've also got property taxes, homeowner's insurance, and ongoing maintenance, commonly estimated at somewhere around 1% to 2% of the home's value per year. For Q's $300,000 condo, that's roughly $3,000 to $6,000 a year just in upkeep, on top of the mortgage. A leaking roof or a broken water heater doesn't care about his budget.
Now let's look at the other side for Q. Renting looks simpler because it is simpler. One predictable payment, no maintenance calls, no property tax bill. But what renting doesn't do is build equity. But here's the part that often gets skipped. If buying would tie up a large down payment for Q and cost more per month than his current rent, that difference doesn't just vanish because he stays a renter. If Q takes the money he would have put toward a down payment and invests it instead, that's real too. The opportunity cost matters just as much as the equity side of the buying argument. So when does buying actually start to win for someone like you? The real question isn't renting or buying in the abstract, it's how long am I actually going to stay here? Closing costs and the slow early equity build mean buying usually needs several years, commonly cited around 5, though it depends heavily on the specific market and loan terms, before it comes out ahead of renting and investing the difference. Let's say Q is fairly confident he'll stay in the same city for at least 6 or 7 years. That's the kind of timeline where buying starts to make real sense. But if Q thinks there's a good chance he moves for a new job in 2 years, the math tips hard toward renting, because he'd likely sell before he ever cleared those upfront costs. One rough tool for sanity checking a specific market is the price-to-rent ratio. Take a home's purchase price and divide it by what a comparable place would rent for in a year. A lower ratio tends to favor buying. A higher ratio tends to favor renting. If Q runs this for his own city and the ratio comes back high, that's a signal his market currently favors renting, regardless of how long he plans to stay. Q's late 20s add one more variable that doesn't show up in any spreadsheet: how likely he is to move. Career changes, job relocations, and simply figuring out where he actually wants to live long-term are all more common at this stage of life than later on. If Q's job feels stable and he's set on staying local, buying starts to look like a reasonable move once the numbers line up. If his career could pull him somewhere else in the next couple of years, renting keeps him flexible while he figures that out. Renting versus buying isn't a moral choice, and it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's a math problem with your specific numbers, your specific market, and your specific timeline, plugged in the same way we just worked through it for Q. Before you decide either one is obviously the smart move, run the actual numbers for your own situation.